we will move back to the
essentially said to our head risk taker in commercial mortgage-backed securities, you got to take more risk. Risk, 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 risk. And that risk leads more to the bottom line.
I think Wall Street found, but also a lot of other people believed, that modern finance was a form of alchemy, that it was a way of taking risk and distributing it very widely, so widely that the overall system was de-risked. And this built up a sense of false confidence in the markets.
And for the staff who signed up to Dick Fauld's credo, along with the bottom line came rewards which were life-changing.
In a good year, as I had in 2006, I made more than $30 million. That gave me more than $1 million bonus. And I know traders that made $10 million in a year, in a good year. But those type of traders made north of 100, 150, $200 million for the firm.
In 2004, Lehman's turnover was $11.5 billion. It rewarded its staff over $5 billion in pay and bonuses. By 2007, turnover had almost doubled, with staff collecting more than $9 billion in pay and bonuses. And top of the pile was Dick Fauld. From the year 2000 to 2008, he took home between $310 and $500 million. The precise figure is disputed. Now, at the Fed on that Friday night last September, the rivals Dick Fauld had boasted of crushing.
Masjid yang pertama
Sorry about the interruption.
dan tertua di kawasan Sungai Buloh.
Was sitting in judgment over him. He had not been invited to the crisis meeting of chief executives. Even some on his own side felt his combative nature would be an unhelpful distraction. After the bank chiefs had left the building, their accountants and lawyers carried on working through the night.
The smell of stale pizza and unwashed bodies is not all that appealing, but you learn to live with it as part of the business. But the intensity was at a much higher pitch than is normally the case because the stakes were just so high.
They were carrying out due diligence, going through Lehman's accounts to piece together an accurate picture of the bank's finances.
To be frank, we had trouble getting traction.
Okay, due diligence is another type of auditors. They come in to look at a bank or a company before they decide to buy it or have the merger and acquisition activities. So these are the special type of auditors that will do due diligence. They'll look through the records to see whether there's any time bombs, hidden liabilities, and things like that. Okay, so this is a very new branch of auditing. They're called due diligence. Usually they work under a lot of pressure because M&A, merger and acquisition activities, and we work under very strict timeline.
And it was clear to us that the management of Lehman Brothers was spending an awful lot of time with at least one other firm going through due diligence. And so we got off to a slow start.
That was because Lehman's was giving its attention to that other suitor. Bank of America was the favorite to buy the ailing investment house. There were highly profitable parts of Lehman Brothers, like the investment division, which they wanted to salvage. But when its advisors started going through Lehman's accounts, what they found appalled them.
I have to say that although we were expecting not to be very happy with what we saw, it was worse than what we'd expected.
They calculated the property crash had left a massive hole in Lehman's balance sheet. Just a month before, the bank had said its portfolio was worth $40 billion. Now it had fallen to around $25 billion.
They might have paid $100 million for a property, and on their balance sheet it says it's worth $100 million, but the reality was it was worth $50 million or $25 million. And when you start adding all those losses up from this property and that property and so on, it ended up adding up to a very big number. A number that was so large, the losses were so large, that it really meant the company was bankrupt unless it got support from the U.S. government.
But the man in charge of the U.S. Treasury, Hank Paulson, had already made clear that was not an option. What happened next took everyone by surprise. The following morning, most New Yorkers were oblivious to the drama playing out down in Lower Manhattan. And as the morning went on, the stakes got higher. Dick Fuld was still counting on Bank of America making him a proposal, but was about to learn that his suitor had a roving eye. John Thain, the chief executive of Merrill Lynch, was the new kid on the block, but he had his own problems. Merrill Lynch's share price was going down because investors were selling, fearful of how exposed this bank also was to the property slump. So when he returned to the Fed on Saturday morning, he took a particularly close interest in the predicament facing his rival. Watching Lehman's representative wilt under the pressure, he began to fear attention might next switch to his own troubled bank.
Seeing him and understanding the emotional drain of what was happening to him, and then knowing that on Saturday that it was likely they were going to go bankrupt, so all of their efforts were going to fail, in some ways reinforced with me, I didn't want to be that person a week later.
So he grabbed the chance to save his own bank.
And so from my perspective, the problem no longer became how to save Lehman, because I assumed Lehman was going to go bankrupt. It became, what does that mean for the financial markets, and what does that mean for Merrill Lynch, and how do I make sure that I protect Merrill Lynch's shareholders and Merrill Lynch's employees and Merrill Lynch's clients so that, Merrill Lynch isn't in a similar position a week later.
He decided to contact Bank of America's chief executive, Ken Lewis, at home in North Carolina, and made him an audacious offer.
I stepped out of the building and actually stood on the sidewalk on the street and called Ken from my cell phone. The conversation was relatively short, and I said to him that I thought it made sense for us to explore some strategic options. He said, great, I can be in New York in a couple of hours.
All bets were now off. It was everyone for themselves. As Bank of America's boss was flying north on his secret date, Dick Fuld had no idea he'd been dumped. Excluded from the Fed, he had spent the morning holed up in Lehman's Midtown HQ.
Dick would occasionally ask, have you heard anything back from Bank of America, because we still found it difficult to believe they had disappeared. And the answer, of course, was always no.
Just a few blocks away, John Thain began to hammer out a deal with Bank of America's chief at a discreet hideaway by Central Park.
It was a corporate apartment, so it was not that different from a hotel room. And it was pretty stark. And it was just the two of us, and it was just the two of us talking.
To Ken Lewis, Merrill Lynch was a much more attractive proposal. It was proof of the Wall Street maxim, kill or be killed. By late afternoon, the jilted Lehman's team were trying hard to put on a brave face.
I guess late Saturday afternoon, there was a slip of the tongue in a meeting that I was at the Fed, which led me to conclude the Bank of America was definitely talking to Merrill, as well as my inability to get calls returned. So I called Dick and said, you know, I'm very worried this is accurate. And he said, I can't believe it. And there was an adjective, which I will not repeat, or an adverb, I guess, before believe it.
It was a whirlwind romance. 2 days later, Bank of America announced it had bought Merrill Lynch for $50 billion.
The combined company is a much stronger entity and will survive most anything.
So, having been stood up, Lehman now had only one potential suitor.
As mid-afternoon on Saturday came, we had a very positive sign. We got moved into a much bigger conference room in the Fed, and there was a sign on the door that said buyer. So we had a feeling that one of the other banks that had been looking at the transaction probably wasn't there.
The teams from Barclays and Lehman were edging closer to a deal.
The man nobody wants to be right now is the longest-serving CEO on Wall Street. Dick Fold faces his biggest challenge to date by far.
Still up in his midtown office, just along from Times Square, Dick Fold was now a helpless bystander as others decided the fate of the bank he had led for so long.
Now all the hopes rested on Barclays. So it was a real disappointment, but it was buffered to some extent because Barclays seemed a lot more interested than they had previously.
How different it all seemed 9 months earlier. Lehman Brothers was celebrating the end of a record-breaking year. It made over $4 billion profit. And the reason for this success? Bricks and mortar. Both Presidents Clinton and Bush had championed home ownership.
Our government is supporting home ownership because it is good for America. It is good for our families. It is good for our economy.
American house prices had risen steadily since the Second World War, but had rocketed after 9/11, when interest rates were slashed. The boom was fueled by loans, with tempting introductory rates being offered to ever more risky clients. The so-called subprime mortgage scandal was born.
We got to the point where they created mortgages that were known as ninja mortgages, no income, job, or assets, relying solely on the appreciation of housing prices.
Mortgage rates are still near 20-year lows.
Homeowners refinance now with almost no paperwork.
If you're a homeowner who's ready for some financial relief,
we'll even give you a free credit report when we...
But the real money for Wall Street banks came not from selling mortgages to homeowners, but from trading bundles of these loans among themselves and other institutional investors.
It's that easy.
These bundles were labeled as high-quality, low-risk assets by the banks.
$4 a month.
By 2007, Lehman's was the largest underwriter of real estate loans in America.
It was a great machine. The risk involved in the machine was that investment banks were supposed to act as distributors. They were supposed to be in the removal business. And Dick Fool used to say this, we're in the removal business, not the storage business.
Across Wall Street and in the City of London, there was a growing assumption that financial wizards had been able to eradicate risk.
Okay, Mommy, I'll take the house.
I think there was a general view around the marketplace that the sophistication of 21st century financial markets had enabled different sorts of risks to be taken by people who really knew what they were doing. There was, if you like, a bit of a fool's paradise. That was not specific to Lehman. That was a market belief that somehow or other everyone had cured the problem.
And that false sense of confidence led Lehman Brothers to do something other more cautious banks shied away from. It borrowed more and more money. By August 2007, for every $1 the bank owned, it was borrowing up to $44. It's called leverage. Whilst most of their competitors, like Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, had a leverage ratio in the 20s or low 30s, Lehman's was much higher.
When I got to Lehman, our leverage was like 20 to 1, and when I left it was 44 to 1 top max, and that means that we have a relatively small amount of capital relative to the amount that we owe. It's 44 to 1 real dollars that we have, and massive dollars that we owe.
It used this borrowed money to play the property market. By 2007, it was investing $60 billion in commercial property, hotels, shopping centers, and residential developments around the world. But while leverage multiplies profits when prices go up, it also multiplies losses if prices fall. And that's what happened in 2007. Why? A growing number of the people who had been seduced by those cheap introductory mortgage rates couldn't keep up with the payments when the rates increased. Repossessions rocketed, and house prices slumped. The subprime crisis exploded on the world. Welcome to Bakersfield, California. It's not quite the kind of place one would imagine as a luxury destination. But that's what Lehman Brothers hoped it would become. It loaned $78 million to a developer with plans to build thousands of new homes in the scorching Central Valley.
Just heard about it. It wasn't a large focus on the desk, but you thought to yourself, geez, this is a little aggressive for a firm our size.
The advertising promised McAllister Ranch with its golf course, man-made lake and beach, and beautiful homes, where dreams become reality and where the good life truly begins. But this oasis was a mirage. Nothing beside remains. It's a victim of Lehman's bankruptcy and the downturn in the property market.
Here's a picture of the lake, what it was supposed to look like when it was finished. Another picture, someone enjoying the lake. We were contracted to build block walls around the project. I believe it was close to 20 miles of wall if we were to finish the whole contract. As you can see, the walls are quite long. That wall right there is approximately 3 miles long.
John Scripter is still owed around $1 million for unpaid work. It was the decision to invest in commercial developments like these that was to be the tipping point for Lehman Brothers. The bank invested aggressively in the property market at its peak, but couldn't get out before the crash.
In essence, Lehman loans money to McAllister in the short haul and then tries to syndicate and sell the syndicated loans globally. And when you can't sell it and share the risk, then it becomes a lead weight on your balance sheet over time. We really just didn't have that much bread, that many dollars to hold on to an asset like this over a longer period of time. It really became a lead weight.
And to Dick Fuld, the architect of Lehman Brothers' grand designs, that lead weight must have seemed heavier by the hour as the weekend ticked away. Sunday morning in New York started with a sense of optimism. The favorite, Bank of America, may have walked away, but Barclays was still in the game. As a precaution, Lehman Brothers had called in America's most famous bankruptcy lawyer, just in case the unthinkable happened. But even he thought a deal would be struck before the day was out.
When I came down Sunday morning, as I was driving down, I was thinking that I might be out about 3, 4 in the afternoon because I had some other things to do. I was actually thinking that this might be a fire drill. There's going to be a deal, and they'll announce it sometime this afternoon, and then I'll be free to go and do the things I had planned to do that Sunday. And that's how the day started.
At the Fed, negotiations had been going on through the night, and a deal looked close.
We had been in a conference call with our board in London, and I was on the call from here. I think it was around 9:30 or 10 when we finished the board meeting Sunday morning, New York time, and frankly, we're feeling cautiously optimistic.
And I think somebody said there may have been a handshake on a deal, and that it had to be run through the FSA in London.
There was a belief, even an assumption, that Lehman's was too big, too important to be allowed to fail. By now, the media were catching on to the story that something big was happening at the Fed.
At this point, all the main players were inside, and I basically just photographed anything that came out of the garage.
As soon as that gate goes up, we started shooting. We're looking for anything, any kind of movement, anybody in a suit. We don't know who we're looking for. And once we do see them, I can't recognize them because they're not like Paris Hilton. These people are not celebrities. So for me, you know, I'm shooting anybody in a suit, and then I figure I'll figure it out later.
One CEO did not have tinted windows, and he shielded his face with his hands, and it was just very telling that, you know, here are the titans of business who are, you know, lauded and you know, had been lauded, shielding their faces, perhaps ashamed, or I don't know why they were doing that.
Lehman Brothers CEO Dick Fuld has been backed into a corner, to say the least.
Fuld has very few options left. The stock in a free fall. A lot of things perhaps a bit too late here for Lehman in terms of owning up to some of the real estate.
Here we go. The bank and its boss had had a difficult relationship with the media.
Shares of Lehman Brothers have fallen 12% in the last week.
3 months earlier, when the press and news channels were full of reports questioning the health of Lehman Brothers, Dick Fuld had railed against them.
I'm also so tired of looking at my ugly picture in the goddamn newspapers. But the sore's close to the firm, you know. It could be a little hot dog guy who stands on the corner. He's close to the firm.
I think we in the media do not and are not responsible in any way for causing a run on the bank. I think that's absurd. I think some people would want to blame the messenger, but at the end of the day, you're talking about institutions that made choices to lever their balance sheets 30 or 40 times. Nobody in the media was forcing them to do that. They should have known better.
And the SEC is investigating 4 rumors that circulated about Lehman Brothers over the past 2 months.
But Dick Fuld thought the constant reporting of Lehman's plunging share price was creating a downward spiral.
We've got to close it down. You know, I make a joke out of it. It's no joke. This has got to end. The leakage hurts us. This is where the rumor mill comes from. It's where the misinformation comes from. We have a communications division. It's got to be controlled there. Anybody outside of that is not authorized to talk to the press, period.
But the man who was authorized to talk to the press found defending the firm to be a thankless task.
The atmosphere was quite surreal and also very unpleasant because there was this very well-entrenched view among senior Lehman people that the outside world was against it. But when it came to it, the story was, does Lehman have the wherewithal to get to the other side? And they were right to ask the question, and we were not able to provide the answers.
Back at the Fed, Barclays was now close to making an offer for Lehman's. But like Bank of America before it, the British bank wanted guarantees for Lehman's debts so it could open for business the next day. Who would underwrite the deal? The American authorities? The British? No one seemed to have an answer.
The tone of the conversations was beginning to change, and you could hear in the voices of the Lehman representatives a higher level of doubt that things were going to work out.
There was deadlock. Lehman's and Barclays had come so far and was so close to a deal, but couldn't seal it without a guarantee in place. The telephone calls across the Atlantic were strained.
Midway through the Sunday afternoon, we, the FSA, informed the New York Fed categorically that from our perspective, we couldn't see how this deal could go forward, given that they were not willing to offer any liquidity guarantees.
Lehman would be cut loose unless Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson authorized the guarantee. The teams of advisors were summoned. It was now or never.
We were asked to come to the main floor where the group of major banks was closeted behind these very heavy doors, and were asked to wait, and spent hours waiting there.
The tension was palpable, as behind closed doors, Hank Paulson was on the phone to London. The fate of Lehman hung on this call, and time was running out. The markets in Europe would open in 12 hours. If the bank wasn't rescued by then, it would be too late.
I spoke to Hank Paulson on the Sunday afternoon, and he said, look, your regulators are asking hundreds of questions, and I made the point they're asking them with very good reason.
Eventually, Treasury Secretary Paulson came out and made an announcement.
The British government was not prepared to let Barclays continue with the transaction. I don't know what actually went on, but that's what we were told. And we asked the secretary whether there were certain things we could do, and his statement was that I'm not going to cajole or plead with the British government, nor am I going to in any way threaten the British government in terms of a relationship.
I think the Americans recognized that and knew that by Sunday afternoon, our time, the game was up. We couldn't possibly get ourselves into a situation where effectively we were guaranteeing an American bank.
To be absolutely categorically clear, the FSA did not stop the Barclays deal. Barclays never brought us a deal. Barclays never negotiated a deal that they thought was satisfactory from their own point of view, and therefore never proposed any deal to us.
We were quite prescriptive about what was going to work and what wasn't going to work, and what we wanted was not available. We walked. End of story.
You know, I think having worked on this for a number of days and having been pretty positive about if we could get all of the pieces lined up, I was gutted.
In the end, the sand had run out of the hourglass. Nothing would work at that point. It was beyond Dick, it was beyond Lehman, it was beyond all of us. It was really a decision for the United States.
Roger Cohen now had the unenviable task of reporting back to Dick Fuld. There will be no knight in shining armor. The British weren't coming.
It was as difficult a call as I have ever made in my life. He said, "This is just unbelievable. How can this possibly be happening?" We spent a few minutes going back over the same ground, and then he then shifted to, all right, is there anything else we can do?
With both Bank of America and Barclays having walked away, it was time for Plan C. There was no Plan C.
This was the first time he really, I think, to me, lost his composure a bit because now death was imminent.
Lehman's bankruptcy lawyers were summoned to the Fed and ushered into the main conference room.
We were told there isn't going to be a Barclays transaction, and therefore Lehman should be prepared to go into bankruptcy. And then suddenly they said, by midnight. And my response was, I don't understand what you're doing. Could you explain what the reason is for this action? And net, what they were saying, well, we really don't have to explain the reason. You need us to finance you, and we're not going to finance you unless you go into bankruptcy. Well, that's pretty compelling. But then with the conversation changed to you, we're speaking to the assemblage, do you understand what the consequences of this decision are and what's going to happen to the marketplace? And they said, we will take care of that.
Treasury officials were confident the fallout from the collapse of Lehman would be containable. News of the impending bankruptcy had already reached London. There will be no money coming from New York for the bank to open for business the following morning.
So it was absolutely clear the advice was Lehman UK had to file. It was insolvent. It was not going to be in a position to pay its debts as they fell due. So that reality had to be grasped. And there were polar reactions to that. There were the lawyers and the accountants who turned their minds to the practical challenge that now had to be met of organising the filing and thereafter dealing with the consequences of it. And then there were the commercial managers, traders and so on, who just couldn't believe that this was going to happen and couldn't focus immediately on what the consequences of that might be for the business or for themselves. They were just completely stunned by it.
As an open-air performance of Offenbach started in Brooklyn, across the water at the Fed, it was all but over.
We were basically told to get out. As we were going down to the garage, we were standing in the elevator and said, I don't think they like us. They basically threw us out. And it's a very serious situation. It was a very somber, sad voyage, if you want to call it that, going back to Lehman. As we approached the Lehman building, it was like pandemonium on 7th Avenue. And I remember there was an odd-looking man there, sort of with a spear, saying, "Down with Wall Street." And I said, well, this is going to be some evening.
We await word on the fate of the 158-year-old firm Lehman Brothers.
We are a minute from midnight in terms of outright catastrophe. We're a heartbeat away from a depression.
Dick Fuld was waiting for them up on the 31st floor.
When we went into the boardroom, you could tell without a lot of deep thought that Dick Fuld was very concerned, very worried, and I would say very depressed.
Dick asked me, "Are you telling me it is over?" And I said, "Yes, Dick. I have nowhere else to go. I am out of options. I can't think of anything else to do." He said something like, "Well, we really gave it every effort. I still can't believe it."
I saw a man sitting there sort of saying to himself, I don't understand how this happened. Where did we go wrong?
Behind closed doors, a final throw of the dice. It so happened that a second cousin of President Bush worked at Lehman Brothers. Could the commander-in-chief succeed where central bankers had failed? What took place remains a matter of dispute. Larry McDonald was told about it by colleagues who were there, although the story is denied by George Walker.
They've tried everything, and they kind of all gathered around George. There was some hope that he would reach out to the president, and in essence, we would go around Hank Paulson and give our message of potential worldwide financial destruction that Lehman would cause directly to the president. You know, the president is his cousin, but to reach out to the White House under duress is a very stressing situation for everybody. He was in a sweat, and finally he agreed to make that call to the White House. The operator put him on hold, which to the people in the room seemed just like an eternity. And as the seconds ticked by, everybody was, more intense. Everybody's pulses and heartbeats were racing a little bit more intently. And finally, the operator came back to the line. And she said, "I'm sorry, the president cannot take your call at this time." There was just a real horrific, blood-curdling feeling in the room of potential destruction and despair.
Dick Fuld and the board of directors had one last task to perform: pass the resolution winding up the bank.
It was dark out, very dark out, and Dick Fuld looked up, clearly a man that was in turmoil, and he looked up and he said, "I guess this is goodbye."
After 42 years at Lehman Brothers, Dick Fuld was out of a job. At their peak, Lehman shares were worth $85 each. They were now worth 3 cents. Finally, in the middle of the night, the bankruptcy lawyers had completed the preparations. They were ready to file the petition.
It's like sending an email. So at 2 a.m. when that started, most of us were drained of emotion. And yes, we filed it. It was the end of a institution which was one of the originators of Wall Street. And here it was all coming to an end by pressing a button on a computer. Sad in many respects.
Wall Street has seen very, very few days like this. The mortgage crisis has now taken down Lehman Brothers right behind.
Expected it, and there were others who were just simply devastated. Lehman Brothers suffering a spectacular downfall. It's stuck. Lehman Brothers, رابع أكبر بنوك الأقراض الأمريكية.
150 Jahre alte Lehman Brothers ist biednie bracie Lehman.
Américaine Lehman Brothers a annoncé qu'elle allait se déclarer faillite.
This is really stupendous. This has happened.
When it collapsed on the Sunday night, that did send shockwaves throughout the world because people thought, well, if they can go down, who else can go down?
Lehman Brothers was the largest bankruptcy in history, 10 times bigger than Enron. The impact of the bankruptcy around the world was unparalleled. Lehman's web of global transactions were hugely complicated, and few really understood them. So with the banking world already jumpy, panic spread as institutions feared how exposed they might be.
Lehman's illustrated this huge problem. The level of impaired assets or bad loans in the system was so high that even recognized institutions in America were being put at risk. And secondly, that Lehman's was entangled in such a complex way with other institutions that whatever happened to one institution was bound to have an effect on the other. So Lehman's was a seminal moment in the sense that it illustrated these two big problems that if we didn't solve, things would get a huge amount worse.
5,000 staff worked at Lehman's European HQ in London. When they arrived that morning, many discovered they were out of a job.
It was like a scene of a bombing and a family bereavement all rolled into one. When I went up to the management floor, everybody was sitting around with their heads literally in their hands. A lot of them had red eyes and black bags under them. Had been there all weekend and all night. And I was told there'd been a meeting of staff suddenly convened that morning in which the head of the European operation had said, "It's all over, go home."
Some people just burst into tears and just didn't know how to cope with it. Other people were on the phone to the headhunters straight away. And you kind of had the best and the worst of human instinct raise its head, as these situations tend to. There were certainly people who felt they were on the lifeboat, they had something sorted out for themselves, but they weren't going to let anybody else on that lifeboat. They're going to sail off and leave you and sort yourselves out.
This is a CNBC special report, the fall of Lehman Brothers.
Over this seismic story, a historic day.
As the start of trading approached, the financial world waited anxiously to discover what would happen.
So Monday morning at Treasury, we were watching the markets very carefully, in constant communication with market leaders about what was happening once they ultimately filed for bankruptcy. It obviously turned out to be very bad. It was worse than we had feared. And while the credit markets basically shut down 2 days later on Wednesday, the real depth of the damage was not seen for weeks or even months. As I describe it, the housing market damaged our financial system, which then damaged our economy. So this crisis is what caused the severe recession that we're in right now.
We had a deluge of communication. In fact, I had something in the order of 5,000 emails that day. Our switchboard at the firm was blocked, the switchboard at Bank Street was blocked. There was a massive communications problem because everybody wanted an answer. They wanted it immediately. I've never experienced that before, and I'm sure I'll never experience that again.
We were getting calls from not just banks and commercial banks, we were getting calls from large American businesses, blue chip businesses, saying they couldn't fund themselves, they couldn't make their payroll, they couldn't fund their inventory. These are some of the best American companies that have very little to do with financial markets, saying they can't access the basic funding they need to pay their employees. The intensity of this period was unlike anything we'd seen before.
By the end of Monday's trading, $700 billion had been wiped off the global stock markets. The Dow Jones, the leading stock exchange index, had plummeted 500 points. It was the biggest fall in a day since 9/11. Money markets around the world froze up because the collapse of Lehman destroyed the confidence banks need to lend to each other.
And over the 4-week period, the 28 days between the failure of Lehman Brothers and the announcement of recapitalization packages for banks around the world in October, there was an extraordinary loss of confidence, a panic, I would call it.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you all had an enjoyable weekend.
The fall of Lehman Brothers brought the global financial system to its knees. And still the debate goes on. Should the US Treasury have stepped in to save the bank?
I never once considered that it was appropriate to put taxpayer money on the line in resolving Lehman Brothers.
Historians will debate for years about whether, if the US government had rescued Lehman Brothers, whether there would have been a greater degree of financial stability. My own view is that the US government had to draw a line in the sand, not least to make everyone in the world, and world governments and central banks, focus on the fact that there was a massive problem.
I believe that allowing Lehman Brothers to go bankrupt was a tremendous mistake. The amount of money it would have taken, 20 billion, 30 billion, compared to the destruction in value that followed the Lehman bankruptcy and the complete shutdown of the credit markets, the billions and billions and billions of losses that were experienced in the market subsequent.
Now, when the Federal Reserve lends money, they can loan money to financial institutions. The law requires the Fed to be secured so that they're not taking much risk. And so in the case of Bear Stearns, they lent $30 billion against a pool of mortgages. In the case of Lehman Brothers, the question is, what assets could they lend against?
I think the tragic thing for the United States was that we came into this crisis without an adequate set of tools to withstand, protect the economy from the acute stress you saw in the financial system. The constraints we faced in Lehman were one example of those kind of constraints. We should not have been in that position, and that's why it's so important that we move more quickly now. And we're moving very, very quickly. You know, we're still in the midst of a pretty severe economic crisis globally, and yet we're going to move with comprehensive regulatory reform while we're still trying to get recovery back on track. That's a symptom of the importance we attach to trying to put in place reform. And it was something that should not have happened.
2 days after the bankruptcy, Barclays Bank got what it wanted all along. It sealed a deal to buy the bulk of Lehman's North American assets for $1.75 billion. It was a bargain, much less than they would have paid had the bank been solvent.
I think all of us would say this is something that we never expected, that we could actually combine with the U.S. bulge bracket firm. I don't use the word transformational lightly. This transaction was transformational.
But for many backroom staff, there was no happy ending.
2 weeks after that, I got a letter, Federal Express, to my house from Lehman Brothers stating that they're no longer honoring my severance agreement. Everything's been taken away. So that really set me into a tailspin. It's like, how could they do that? You know, after 20 years of service, now I have absolutely nothing.
A month later, Dick Fuld made his first and only public appearance, summoned to Washington to account for the disaster at a congressional hearing.
I mean, do you have anything to say to the people that are watching this right now, that are wondering, why this has happened? You have nothing to say?
Are you going to be in the testimony?
Absolutely.
Good.
I wake up every single night
Please wait till then.
thinking,
Nothing else to say beyond that?
what could I have done differently? In certain conversations, what could I have said? What should I have done? And I have searched myself every single night.
I thought he should have apologized. I think he didn't confess to anything. It made it sound like he personally, Dick Fuld, did not cause the collapse of the firm. Like he denied everything, that it wasn't his fault. And I don't think he was honest.
I can look right at you and say, this is a pain that will stay with me for the rest of my life. That's all.
The former chief executive has been subpoenaed in numerous civil cases which allege the bank misrepresented and overvalued its assets in the months before the collapse. He declined to be interviewed for this documentary. Lehman Brothers was the catalyst for the crash of 2008. Those who were there on Wall Street that weekend say what brought this American giant down was the love of money. It was greed and hubris that led to the fall. The bankers soared so high for so long, they thought they were invincible, but they were flying too close to the sun.
When I went to college, I learned in Economics 101, you do not finance long-term investments with short-term money. And that's what happened. And I believe it happened because greed took over. And the returns were so big. And so many people were making so much money that they lost all fear. And risk did not become a factor in doing anything. And that was the real dilemma.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay. Next week, what caused the greatest financial crisis since the Depression? We examine the boom before the bust. To find out more,
Okay, I hope you find that documentary interesting. So the movie documentary basically maybe implied that Lehman Brothers and Dick Fuller is responsible for the financial crisis. But from my view is that I think maybe they are a symptom. If it wasn't them collapsing, another bank that collapsed because of the property bubble. Okay. So, but the question now asked is that why did the Federal Reserve allow Lehman Brothers to go bankrupt rather than to rescue it? So somebody say that if you have spent money to rescue the Lehman Brothers, it may cost about 30, 40 billion US dollars, but allowing it to collapse have triggered this firestorm through the whole world that caused much more trillions. It caused trillions of damage and also trigger off this phenomenon called quantitative easing, where the Federal Reserve was forced to print more money to stabilize the economy and to rescue what they could have stopped further contagion effect, the spillover effect from the collapse of the Lehman Brothers. Okay. Any questions from this? Any questions from this? This relates to the assignment. Okay. So another issue also is you want to put in your answer is this kind of disaster also involve cross-border between different countries. So if the country's authorities or regulators do not cooperate, then it will also result in problems because smart people, smart CEO can arrange for transactions in different countries to avoid oversight. You know? Good example is like, for example, in China and US, a lot of companies in China listed in US under the NASDAQ counters, but the auditors are from mainland China. For example, you have KPMG China. So when they want to audit the books of those Chinese companies that are listed in NASDAQ US, but the business is in China, when the auditors from US and the Audit Oversight Board authorities go to China, the government of China do not allow the authorities of US to access the working papers of the Chinese auditors. So this has resulted in a dual system, you know, where the audits of American companies based in the United States and the audit of Chinese companies that are listed in US, but business based in China, they have two standards. Okay, so recently the United States have threatened the Chinese authorities that if the Chinese government do not allow the Audit Oversight Board of US to access the working papers of Chinese auditors, then all the companies that are listed in the NASDAQ in the United States will be suspended. So that has started some actions on the side of the Chinese government. So now they're in talks to actually allow the Oversight Board from the United States to access the working papers of Chinese auditors in China. Okay, maybe you can mention that in your answer, that cooperation between different authorities in different countries will also help in preventing future financial crises. Any questions so far?
Mr. Ken, I would like to ask you where we can refer to notes for the role of the auditor, because if we Google, it's only basic role, like you see, verify the financial statement here and there. There is no formal job scope, what they have to do.
See, what you have mentioned is now in the stage of evolution, right? So people are asking the question everywhere, including auditors themselves.
Oh, that's why.
What is my function?
Yeah.
So it seems that when things go wrong, they get blamed left, right, and center, right?
Right.
So the auditors are very worried, you know. So the government in Malaysia and United States now are trying to come up with new laws and new guidelines to, what do you call that, to make it more clear cut, you know, what is the duty of the auditor. Now, if you read the annual report of the company, for example, audited financial statement in the audited company, the auditors would, you know, have this audit report.
Yeah.
And at the end there, they put a disclaimer that this report is only meant for shareholders and members of the company, and they are not liable to other users of the financial statements.
Yeah.
Okay. But in the court cases, in many cases, people have won who are not shareholders for example, they are bankers or creditors, they have sued the auditors and actually win, win. So the liability of auditors under Companies Act and the Capital Market Services Act is actually very wide. Okay, it's
So
very wide.
who become auditor is very poor actually, because
Very poor. And then in the Server Dynamic case, for the first time in Malaysia, the client, Server Dynamic, is suing KPMG for negative report. Can you beat that or not? So they have been sued for defamation, right? So these cases are all been tested in the court, because although the Company Act says something, a lot of the sections are not tested in the courts. So they need to drag it to the court and go through the judges, to come out. If you get some very smart lawyers, like this time Siri Shafi, he's very sharp. He can do a lot of things to upset the status quo and come up with the finding that become a precedent law. Because once you go to the court and the judge give a certain judgment, this become a case law, that other judges will rely on. For example, the case of the summon, where the CEO and CFO was given a summon to settle the case by paying for it. So this case now become precedent already. Other cases they get dragged to the court and people get sued or get charged, they're going to cite this precedent, So
if like this explanation, Mr. Ken, because the presentation, there is a question for internal external role in a corporate governance. So far I only have 3 points. 3 point means I only have 1 page of the slide to explain the role, because I not really have a solid note to explain what is their role. Of course, they are auditor to do audit.
Okay. Based on the corporate governance, the role of the external auditor is there are basically three principle, right? So the first principle is effective board. The second principle is effective audit and risk management. And the third one is credible corporate reporting. Okay. So in terms of effective audit and risk management, the auditors in the corporate governance guideline, they are supposed to swear allegiance that they are independent. Okay, that they're independent. And then number 2 is they report to the shareholders. Okay, and if they discover any fraud, they are supposed to report.
Okay, then in the same page already, because I cannot catch which is the point for the
you can actually put all this point in, and also in your answer, don't just focus on the external auditor. Also
internal external.
About internal auditor. So the internal auditor, the role is to report to the audit committee, right? And the role of the internal auditor is to actually do more operational audit. Okay, the external auditor more concerned with financial audit. So they will look at the balance sheet, they will look at the P&L account, and they will audit whether those figures are correct, true and fair or not, right? So the external auditor will look at that. But like a person to be effective, they need a right hand and left hand, right? So the right hand could be the external auditor, but they only come in at year end.
Right.
So for effective risk management, you really need another role of internal auditor that is coming in 12 months a year. 12 months a year. So they are there 12 months a year, and they will internal audit the operational issue throughout the 12 months. So operational audit, for example, the external auditor will look at stock figure. Okay, how much is it, valuation, they will look at the figure, But the internal auditor will look at procurement, for example. Is it been done in a way that is proper? For example, is there any cheating or not? Are there any quotation or not? Or are the stocks being bought inflated price? So now you look at the government, they say the vaccine was actually bought maybe at inflated price. Now, who is supposed to audit them? Not the external auditor. So in corporate governance, maybe you can say that as far as government is concerned, the Auditor General should have gone and looked at it, right? Because it's government. So there's a blind. So maybe in your answer, you can mention that corporate governance in terms of CG can also be applied to other organizations like government. So for government, another auditor will come in. They call the Auditor General, because the external auditor don't handle this matter, is government one, right? So maybe in your answer you can mention that Auditor General should have selected samples to audit. You know? And also they mentioned Immigration Department, the award of contracts. Now they brought up the issue, somebody brought up the issue of whistleblower. I think it's whistleblower, because it came out in a newspaper article that the award was awarded to the son-in-law of the former prime minister, right? So if that is the case, then it can be regarded as a related party transaction. So one of the role of auditor is to, in the corporate governance, is to look at any transaksi dengan parti berkaitan, related party transaction. That means transaction to do with the CEO, to the major shareholder, to the GM, you know, because these are internal party, you know, sure got some hanky-panky if it's allowed to happen. So the role of the auditor, in terms of external audit, to report this related party transaction to the shareholder. Any of them, even small amount, also must be reported in terms of the pricing. Is it fair? Is it done properly? Okay. So in terms of government, because it's a blind spot, external auditor don't look at this. So, but we are looking at what's the role of auditor. Question is quite wide, you know, not necessarily external auditor. Yeah. So the role of the internal auditor in terms of related party transaction, right? The internal auditor have to look at it also. So sometimes it's not reported. Is it an offense not to report? You go to the board, you ask the board member, can you please declare your related party transaction? Nobody reported. Or maybe one director was absent, was not at the meeting. So give him the benefit of doubt lah. He got related party transaction, but because he was not at the meeting, you know, maybe he didn't know about it lah. Is it fair? But then the external auditor and internal auditor still have to investigate and take sample of transaction that has the name of the relative of the director. Sometimes they use a son's name or something like that. So these are more difficult to audit because it may be hidden under nominees. So it's very interesting that this is a live case coming up. Whether anything will come up from the investigation in terms of what I read in the newspaper, in terms of the procurement of the vaccine. All these two cases come up because of whistleblower. So like we mentioned just now, whistleblowing is a very important component of corporate governance also, you know, right? I think they encourage whistleblowing regulations and protection for staff. So you read through the best practices, this is one of the role that auditors can play, whistleblowing, okay. Right? And related party transaction, very important. Of course, many people say that, many people think, you know, like husband and wife. The wife say, what belongs to the husband is mine. What's mine is also mine. So people have a tendency to benefit, you know, from their position, you know.
It's Welcome to Malaysia. Malaysia always play this scheme. Husband and wife can be together. Yeah,
can be also. Yeah, we don't know. So that's why some companies and banks don't allow husband and wife to work together in the same department or even in the same company because of this conflict of interest. Okay, so the role of auditor is to be the watch party, the referee, to make sure that if it happens, it's disclosed and the terms are disclosed. Okay. Now, if it's not disclosed, then it's a crime under CMSA, under Companies Act. It's a crime to have a related party transaction and you don't disclose at the meeting. Right? So at every board meeting, the company secretary will ask, all right, is there any related party transaction that has to be declared? In fact, I attended one of these meetings early on in the years, just when all this law come into place. The chairman is a very experienced person from Khazanah. So when he came in for the meeting, he asked at the beginning of the meeting, are there any related party transactions that directors have to disclose now? So everybody keep quiet and more. Then the next question he asked is, can the company secretary draft a letter, a declaration letter for all the directors to sign that they don't have? So when that happened, then one director put up the hand and say, oh yeah, I got one. Actually, the subcontractor is my nephew or something like that. So when it comes down to you have to declare in writing, right? A lot of people will start to come cleaner, right? Because they may have relatives that are more, or they use proxies, okay? They use proxies. So this normal corporate governance issue that must be transparent. Is not to say that all related parties transactions are wrong, but they just need to disclose. Okay. So RRPT, or related party transaction, is given a very prominent role in corporate governance. Must disclose. Even the payer, the fees being paid to the auditor must also be disclosed, and the auditor is supposed to check what fees and gaji or rights are being paid, to the directors, must be disclosed also, under corporate governance, right? In fact, the corporate governance say that each director must disclose by bands of 50, and some even say that for bigger companies, they must disclose everything, what they get. A lot of directors not happy, because they are afraid that they might get kidnapped if they disclose too much. But this is coming, so all these are being put tighter and tighter. So now you got a lot to write about auditors now. So many things already. Correct or not? So you discovered 3. I just give you another 3 already.
Yeah. But putar balik, peti balik still are like macam almost the same. So I need to how to say, never mind. I will settle up. I will take the point that you shared just now.
So in terms of this role of auditor, you're right, there's no really definitive role, the auditor try to limit themselves by signing off and then put down there, I'm not liable to other people. Then case law has shown that they are liable and they've actually lost cases, right? So they are also like, they have cases in the audit report where they are now required. Last time they only just say true and fair, and then they said now they are required by the law to disclose this thing called key audit matter. Key audit matter is a simple word for what keep the auditor awake at night, right? So now become more qualitative, not so much quantitative. Quantitative, yes, true and fair. They sign off the accounts are true and fair. But now they require what keeps you worried and cannot sleep at night. You must also disclose. So this is called it's called KAM, key audit matter. All right, key audit matter. So if you read audit report nowadays, the format different already. Key audit matter. For example, they feel not comfortable with the valuation of plant and machinery, or they feel not comfortable with high turnover of CFO. 1 year the CFO changed 10, 12 times, So they will put down there, they don't feel comfortable. And what tests have they done to make them more comfortable? Okay, this is called key audit matter. So this is another new requirement. And then going forward, you've discussed before, they may have to comment on ESG also, environmental, and the ESG matter. They may have to go and look and sign off whether what the management is saying is actually true or not. Okay, it may be another assignment, a separate assignment the auditor will be asked to do. So another common assignment the auditor actually will do for company is, in the audited account, there's this thing called penyata pengurusan risiko dan kawalan dalam. It's called the statement of internal control, statement of risk management and internal control, which you will find a listed company and then report. This is the statement directors have to make. And then this statement have to be audited by auditors, right? So they have to sign off that what the directors say is happening. They have to sign off. So auditors' role now been expanded, not just necessarily do auditors report, they have to do supplementary report also for other issues. Okay. So does that answer some of your questions? So this is a very wide topic because there's no straight answer. So again, there's no right or wrong answer for this topic, but it makes you think that what are the issues that will be evolving over time. So politicians also use audit as a weapon. Politicians also use auditing as a weapon. So all these issues turning up by the new government,
against the previous government, it surfaces, I believe it's not an accident also. Okay? But they may have a case also if evidence come out that, you know, the procurement are not done according to arm's length. But the role for this government one will be more for the Auditor General, not so much for the external auditor. But later on, the external auditors may be called in to assist in the investigation, as forensic auditor is also possible. Okay. Okay, let's run down the rest of the assignment. I think a lot of you would have a hard time doing this. You want to take a snapshot, you can. Take a snapshot of this. The red color one is ideas that we put in. Okay, you can take a snapshot of this. You can take a screenshot now or snapshot. Okay, we got that. These are some of the ideas to for the assignment. But in the case of the Lehman Brothers and the financial crisis of 2008, very few people go to jail. Very few people go to jail because it was very hard to prove, and also there were no relevant regulations in place for against those people. Like the Dick Fuller, the CEO of Lehman Brothers, he took away $350 million US as remuneration. That's pretty good, isn't it? 350 million US is close to 1 billion ringgit, right? So he can retire for the rest of his life, even though he don't have a job left as a CEO of you know. Okay, so you can take a snapshot of that. And recently, Credit Suisse also found to have fake customer files. So this problem still occurring. Okay, you can take a snapshot of that. So regulators must follow up rigorously with all this whistleblowing. If there's anybody whistleblowing, they should follow up. In the case of Bernie Madoff, the whistleblower actually produced a report. His name was Marco Polo. He's produced a full report and sent it to the SC. But the SC never took any action. So that's very bad. Wrong impression by regulators. Okay. And this one I find interesting, that if Islamic banking has been adopted, maybe financial crisis would happen, because Islamic banking is more straightforward, where every transaction must be backed by a physical transaction. So they don't allow financial engineering. Financial engineering sort of package the original product and make it like gambling, like gambling. Okay, so this one is the global financial crisis. You can take a snapshot of this. Okay, we've done that. You can also take a snapshot of this one. So in terms of regulations, just now you heard from the documentaries, the British government decided not to cooperate with the United States government, right? And because they refused to cooperate, the way to restructure Lehman Brothers, so Lehman Brothers collapsed without being rescued, because they come up with a plan that the British government will force the bank to take over Lehman Brothers business, some of the business. So this will help Lehman Brothers to survive. But the British government decided not to use their own British taxpayer money to go and bail out American taxpayer, American problem. So when there's a big problem, governments often don't help each other.
Okay. Take a snapshot of that. So as a result of the collapse, unemployment rate reached 10%. 3.8 million Americans lost their jobs. Homes, sorry, lost their home. 3.8 million Americans lost their home. Sad. Okay. Now, Enron, you can take a snapshot. The answer is in your notes, lecture notes. So you describe Enron, the case study. This one, what should have no problem. So Enron took very high risk and went into creative accounting. And in Enron's case, the auditor actually puckered with the CEO and CFO to go and hide the things. So it's worse. That means auditor and the management are the same gang. And Andrew Fastow, the CFO, actually benefited by having related party transaction, but his related party transaction was approved by the board. This is very funny, you know. So the board actually allowed him to make money at the expense of the company. Conflict of interest. So Arthur Andersen used to be a Big Five auditor that lost their license. And over 5,000 auditors lost their jobs. It's very sad. Conflict of interest. Arthur Andersen was the auditor, but is also a consultant. So they are playing a dual role. So nowadays, in corporate governance, auditors cannot take consulting job, the same client. So if they do auditing, they cannot do consultancy job because of the conflict of interest. So in the case of Arthur Andersen, they're receiving many more millions US dollar to consult than audit fee. Audit fee is only a small amount. So of course, they won't be independent. They're more interested in helping the client hide the things and do business with them. Funny thing is that Arthur Andersen actually destroyed documents and so they lost a license because they did this. So if they have kept the cool and did not destroy the documents, they may have kept the license. Okay, you can take a snapshot of this on Enron. And then the next one is WorldCom. You can also take a snapshot of WorldCom. Back up. So the CEO of WorldCom kena 21 years jail. He's still in jail. Okay, take a snapshot of this. Okay, take a snapshot of this also. So they manipulate in the WorldCom case, the CFO, the accounting officer, they manipulate the accounts by booking in all the expenses as assets. They capitalize the assets. So if you capitalize the assets, that means you got no expenses, so your profit go up. And they also record false transaction without supporting document. So in this case, the CEO kena 21 years jail. Whereas in our case, Server Dynamic, the CEO, CFO, and the director only kena compound of $3 million. Now, in the case of WorldCom, the whistleblower was an internal auditor. Her name was Cindy Cooper. Okay, very brave lady. She go and report to WorldCom directors. When the Auditcom did not follow up on this, she will report to the SEC. You think she can get a job nowadays as an internal auditor in Cindy Cooper? I think not many companies were there to hire her. But anyhow, she's now on the lecture circuit. She's lecturing on the world platform, corporate governance, and so she got a job not as an internal auditor, but as a lecturer. So actually, I was wrong. Bernie Ebbert didn't kena 21 years. He kena 25 years jail. 25 years jail. The CFO kena 5 years. Oh, that's not very long. And the financial controller kena 1 year. That's not too bad. think 5 years, you get 1/3 off, so you're out by 3 years. Bernie Abbott, 25 years, you get 1/3 off, so he should be still in there. Bernie Abbott kena 150 years, and he just died in prison in last year. So Sarbanes-Oxley, the act was passed after this, same year. And then Malaysia followed with Capital Market Service Act, which is broadly similar. They follow the same style in 2007, Capital Market Service Act. Okay, you can take a snapshot of Bernie Madoff. So Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme. The CFO, the account officer, also pakat, helping to hide the books. The auditor is his relative. Okay. There was a financial whistleblower, Harry Markopoulos. He reported to SC, but nothing was done. Take a snapshot of this. It is a snapshot of Bernie Madoff. He was arrested in 2008. Why 2008? Because that's the same year Lehman Brothers collapsed, remember? Okay, 2008. So when Lehman Brothers collapsed, the stock market globally collapsed. So when the market collapsed, it triggered margin call. People need money to pay because people cannot get money anywhere else. The banking system got frozen. So a lot of his customers start to ask him to redeem money. He went to him to ask to get some refund, some redemption. So he realized they cannot pay already because he already used the money and siphoned off the money. It's a Ponzi scheme. There was no investments made. There were no money in the bank, not enough. So he confessed, he pleaded guilty. He actually reported himself in as a police, as a guilty. He's actually arrested when he reported to the police. And you know who's the whistleblower? His son. His son actually whistleblower on him. But I doubt he's a true whistleblower. I think that it is a family strategy to enable the other family members to get clean. So the wife and the two sons reported to the police so that they will appear to be innocent. But anyhow, it's very tragic. One of the sons died from cancer in 2014, and one of his sons committed suicide. The only one left alive now is the wife. He died in prison in the age of 82 in 2021, like 2 years ago. Many people commit suicide because they lost their life saving. Okay. So Madoff audit firm was audited by this Fritling and Horowitz, a firm that's occupied a 13-foot times 18-foot storefront office, a small little butcherette room with only 3 employees. So David is the only professional accountant qualified and has been auditing the books since 1991. So for 100 billion investment books, obviously 3-man team not cukup lah. So he never did a proper audit, okay? But rubber stamp and sign everything. So he pleaded guilty in 2009. He became a whistleblower. So his sentencing was being postponed because he's cooperating with the government. So he finally was sentenced to 1 year home detention and 1 year supervised release, which is quite a good deal, isn't it? You know what's home detention? That means you go back home, you don't go out at night lah. I think that's pretty good deal. You can watch TV and stuff at home, and you're basically make sure that you don't go out jalan-jalan at night lah. And then 1 year of supervised release. That means when you go out to jalan-jalan, you must follow certain restriction. You cannot go outstation. You must only travel in a certain area, say within New York. I think he got a pretty good deal. But he was fined 130 million. 130 million. But this old man have 130 million to pay. That's pretty good, isn't it? Huh? That means his audit fees is 130 million. Huh? I think cannot be. There might be a typo. I'm not sure. I think maybe it is 130 million. You can check on this, students, that he was actually fined 130 million. 130 billion impossible. But it may be also, because they say fine 130 billion for his fees and his investment in the company. That means he could have also invested early in the company, knowing that it's a Ponzi scheme, and then make money from the scheme and then cabut and then make money from there. Possible. In a Ponzi scheme, it doesn't mean that you cannot make money as an investor. If you're early in the scheme, in the beginning of the scheme, you can make a lot of money because other investors are paying for you. So you jump early, but make sure you don't go back in again. So I suspect maybe this fella, this auditor, who is his relative, would have known about the Ponzi scheme, right? You earn from the audit fee by signing blindly. And then on top of that, he put money into the scheme early and then jump early with a really big profit. That's why he's fined 130 billion. Geneva Ponzi scheme, can you take a snapshot of this? It means this scheme actually promised to sell gold to investors at a slightly higher price and then promise them something like 8%, 15% return per month, right? Month. So later on, when people wanted back the gold and wanted back they will keep the gold for the customer, right? When the people wanted the investment back, they find that the gold is no longer there. So the company has Muslim director and a member of the Pahang royal family was the director. So do not trust royal family or the politicians who appear in the director, because they may also themselves be conned also, Yeah? Sometimes they offer them directorship not knowing, and these people sign up as a director without knowing the issues. And then they claim that it's based on Islamic banking principles and so on to attract Muslim investors. Okay. Geneva, Malaysia and Geneva share the same name and shareholder, Dr. Marcus Yee and Dr. Ng Po Ying. And also Singapore, also they cheated. A lot of people from Singapore, a lot of people from China as well. And the funny thing is that the scheme was officially launched, Malaysia one was launched by the former Prime Minister, Nam. Okay, so you can take a screenshot of this. $8,000 customers got cheated, okay? And there's supposed to be 4,000 kg of gold that never been found. Okay, take a screenshot. You take a screenshot of this here. Okay, so this is Geneva Gold. So in Geneva Gold, 8 individuals were charged and more than 1,000 counts of money laundering, illegal deposit paid, gold investment scheme. After legal battle for several years, High Court ruled that Geneva Gold was found guilty of money laundering and the deposit scheme has imposed a 450 million fine. The directors are not sure whether the directors have been sentenced or not, or whether they got free. Okay, here's the part. They take a screenshot. 8 individuals were sentenced 4 to 9 years jail, fine of 1 million, 4 million. 3 directors, Dato' Tan, Dato' Philip Lim, Ahmad Khairuddin, General Manager Lim Kah-hing, 2 business advisor, Dr. Ng and Marcus, and 2 individual, Dato' Chiu. So many Datos, and Yao Ki Leong. I'm sure they would appeal and it will take some time before they finally. In Mega Media, if you take a snapshot of this, they do DVD and they publish fantastic results. So this cheated a lot of banks. So when they defaulted, the bank sent in forensic auditor and they found a big lubang there. 1 billion worth of money was siphoned out, mainly financed by the banks. Banks lend them the money and the money is gone. They'll use it to buy machinery, but the machinery is fake. No machinery actually came in. They actually obtained genuine bill of lading, court bill of lading, the documentation. They fake the contents, make it look like the machinery came into the country from Taiwan and other countries. And then because the proper documents were received by the banks, bill of lading and port documents, the bank released the money to the company. By right, the bank should release the money to the vendor, to the seller of the machines. Okay? But I think they got themselves covered. They would have their own proxy in Taiwan that would take the money. But in this case, a lot of money were released to the local agent. Okay, so basically the CFO and CEO well up the whole amount, which is close to 1 billion ringgit. So the forensic auditor says that there are substantial irregularities. Financial position is really misstated. So the machinery are all bluffing. No such machines. There are factories in somewhere in Subang. One day I passed by, I found that it's still empty, very eerie factory, nothing in darkness. Okay. So after all this time, the case is still stuck. They try to charge some people, but only one fellow kena, the former executive chairman and financial controller. Okay, you can take a snapshot of this. So only one director so far got sentenced to jail, Datuk Muhammad Sheikh Harun, sentenced to 18 months in jail for providing fake revenue figures. Fine 300,000. If you don't pay the 300,000, get 1 more year jail. So you go to jail for 1 year plus 18 months. So during the fraud, PA also involved. PA is a financial controller, created fictitious invoices. Okay, so apart from fake the fake machinery, they also created fake revenue. So Mr. Kok is given a fine of 500,000, and if you don't pay, he get 1 year jail, which is not too bad also lah. Not too bad. Maybe he's a young fella just listening to boss's instruction. Be lah, if boss asks you. Okay, then you got Transmile. Take a snapshot of this, Transmile. Okay, snapshot, take a snapshot. And then this one also. Snapshot, Transmile. Transmile, there was also a very sad case. The former Transport Minister, Mr. Ling Long Sek, was a chairman. So he quickly resigned when the case blew up. But I think Ling Long Sek was innocent because he doesn't know anything. Independent chairman. One of the major investors of Transmile is a guy called Robert Kwok, a famous billionaire. So Robert Kwok also cannot cheated in this case. So it doesn't mean that if you're a billionaire, you cannot get cheated. You also get cheated. Okay, take a snapshot. So forensic audit was conducted. Fake invoices amounting to 330 million. Okay. Chief Financial Officer kena jail, got jail. Or they got fined. Okay, both were fined. Was delisted. Now Gan, the CEO, was found guilty for finishing misleading statement to Pusa. He's sentenced to 1 day imprisonment. That's not bad, isn't it? 1 day. And 2.5 million fine. Will you accept this if you are gone? Anybody? You're given 2.5 million fine and 1 day jail. Is that a good deal?
Yeah, some for him. Correct?
Yeah, 2.5 million jail only.
Yeah, 1 day only. Yeah,
1 day jail
2.5
only.
million, maybe he can sell whatever property from overseas and then cover back. So this is Malaysia lah. So now I understand already. From the comparison of overseas and Malaysia, Malaysia have very light penalty and punishment. No wonder that we not able to recover from the fraud and scandal.
It's a very selective punishment. It's not even, you know. So you read through some cases, some guys gonna 2 year jail, right? But this guy gonna 1 day jail. So very got meaning,
Mr. Ken, for this second question, if let's say is explained or answered by the ACTA itself instead of elaborate by with the scandal, would you accept that kind of report?
Yeah, there's like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. In fact, some of the best answers are thought of by students that also I thought about it. Actually, it's true also. You know? So do not be afraid to give answers that are creative, think outside the box. You know, you may actually get bonus points because it's something that nobody thought of earlier. It's an evolving subject, and it's not like accounting 1 + 1 is 2. You know, in this case, auditing and corporate governance, 1 + 1 can be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those people can be right also, right? But now it's not a good time to become an auditor. A lot of people have been auditor. In fact, a lot of people also resign, don't want to become auditor because liability is too heavy to be external auditor. But for those who are considering becoming auditor, it may be a good idea to become an internal auditor. Now, internal auditor don't have all these liability hanging over your head because you are required by listing rule, but they have not really defined what's your qualification and what's your liability, you know. The liability lies with the audit committee. So you are the workhorse of the audit committee. So the internal auditor actually will report what he finds to the audit committee, document it. The internal auditor is safe. But who will carry the time bomb is the audit committee, right? Because if the audit committee don't do anything and then later take action, the internal auditor won't get into trouble because there's proof that he has reported the matter and whistleblow the matter to the audit committee, right? So internal auditor can be in-house or it can be outsourced. There's only one case where the internal auditor was sued, and this is an outsourced internal auditor. He went to court. I think it's to do with this bread company. What's the name of the bread company? There's a famous brand last time. You eat bread, there's one brand. Silverbird. Is it Silverbird? I think it's called Silver something. So this company already delisted. And this company created fictitious revenue. And the internal auditor and external auditor both didn't find out. So the banker sued both the internal auditor and the external auditor. I think external auditor decided to settle and pay, but the internal auditor decided to go and fight it out in the case. The internal auditor is an outsourced audit firm. Okay, so for those who contemplate becoming auditor, internal auditor I think still can cari makan in terms of quite safe liability. And if you become forensic auditor, is also okay, but can be dangerous. If you saw the video last week, Jalil Ibrahim, internal auditor, will go and do digging around in Hong Kong. He cannot murder. So I think forensic auditor quite risky job. So internal auditor, if you don't get involved in all this investigation overseas, and then going forward, there will be things like ESG auditors and safety auditors. In fact, safety auditors are paid very good income, very good fee and salary. I met one guy who is a qualified auditor, chartered accountant. he decided to do a safety audit course, and then he ended up being a safety auditor, going on to the oil rigs and the PSO and whatever. He's earning something like 50,000-60,000 ringgit a month by doing this kind of audit, okay? A safety auditor. So the safety auditor are required under OSHA for construction site also. So you can do work in construction site, do your physical audit, safety audit, okay? Safety audit. So it's a more physical job, maybe not suitable for girls, for ladies. But I've seen lady auditors also. So the pay is very good, okay? Okay, let's go on to capital market. So this answer is given by the student who talk about the act and the role of these cases. So you can take a screenshot of this. Okay, the role of the auditors and also of the various acts. So you can see the offenses, very heavy punishment nowadays, 3 million fine, 5-year jail, some 10-year jail. Okay, the snapshot. So jail sentence is a deterrent. But then you got judges that only give 1 day jail. How? Send the wrong message, right? And then give compound also to send the wrong message. So in your answer, you should mention that, you know, the Attorney General should really have his wings cut clip you know, limit his power. Okay, the same goes for WorldCom. Okay, whistleblower, Cynthia Cooper. Okay, you got all this. You can take a snapshot. Snapshot. Okay, got it. Okay, take a snapshot of this. Okay, you will take a snapshot. This one, the student think that auditors are like disciplined teachers in the school, you know, wrongdoing, they take the rotan out in the report. So section 266 talks about the power and duties of the auditors. You can mention that in your answer also, 266. With 266, then, you know, the director may not want to mind because no auditors can report for this, and have the power, okay, access books and you can take a snapshot of this, Okay, the fees earned by KPMG and Nojo. The auditor charged too low a fee is not a good sign also. So sometimes the question is been asked by Khazanah for the minority watchdog and meeting, why the audit fee actually get less. They also ask why they worry, because it may show that the quality of the audit has dropped. Okay. Audit fees go up, of course, the shareholder will be saying, but audit fee drop, the authorities will ask, why drop? Now, in the annual report, the company also, listed company also required to disclose the remuneration of the internal auditor. If you realize that, you read through the annual report, you have to disclose. Excuse me, just give me a second. Hello?
A transaction of 3 ringgit which is to approve this transaction, press 1. To speak to our operator, please press 0.
Okay, students, ladies and gentlemen, this is an example of a scam, which we mentioned 2 lectures ago. I received a call just now, this is a real call from Public Bank about my bank card, but I never have a bank card. Okay, so what they want me to do is to answer this call and then press on the button and then somehow it's a scam lah. So what I'm doing now, the safe thing to do is hang up. Or should I answer the call? What do you think?
Hang up. Unknown number shouldn't answer at all actually. If any urgent, the bank will look for you, maybe sign a letter to your house if you have any outstanding. Don't entertain. don't
Exactly
entertain.
right. Exactly right. Many people are scammed and cheated. Okay, so if you read the newspaper, the teacher got cheated few 100,000, and another housewife got cheated another 60,000. I just wonder how come they pay so much money online to this scam. I cannot understand, right? But this is
Critical
regularly,
thinking.
this is regularly happening. So that's why I show you that video. I think 2-3 classes ago. It was under the Capital Market Service Fund initiative, where they have this budget used to create this seminar to educate people like you and me, not to be caught by scam. Think like an auditor, so you won't be cheated. Okay, so it's amazing, these calls are coming in every day. So please don't answer the call like Chin say, hang up. Police also, sometimes police, the police station or immigration, many scary things. Okay, so take a screenshot of that. The fine and punishment is very useful. Capital, okay, Companies Act 257 say that you must send financial statement, right? So people in Geneva go, very simple, just ask for online accounts, no audited accounts, you should be warning already, right? There's no audited accounts. So based on Companies Act, every company must have audited accounts. Now, if a company wants to opt to be an exempt private company, they have to meet special requirement. Not every company can be given this requirement, but Geneva Go claim that they are an exempt private company and therefore no need to file accounts. Okay. So you must find out from the Companies Commission whether Geneva Go has got the necessary approval to be an exempt private company. Okay. They still need to circulate audited financial statement to members. So although they don't need to, what they call that, file, post it onto the website, okay, file the accounts with they still need to circulate the account to the members. That means the people who invest in the funds. Another thing is that this company that offer you financial product must also have a registered prospectus. And the registered prospectus should also be signed off by an auditor on the financial statement, that the financial statements are reasonable and true and fair. Okay. So if they don't do that, they're liable to a fine of 20,000. Hey, there's no jail sentence. It's fine. So remember, always ask for accounts. Okay, take a snapshot. Take a snapshot. When something is too good to be true, be careful. 156 about deposit money. You must have a prospectus. 231, protection of auditors against regulation. So it says that auditors, director, officer who whistleblow, this is very important. You see the word whistleblow, they are protected by the law. But protected in the sense that you cannot lose your job. But it does not say what happens if the guy sent a gangster to wet you up. So there's a case that make some people reluctant to whistleblow. Okay, sometimes the whistleblower also can get arrested. So the protection offered by Akta Syarikat 321 is if the auditor, director, officer, internal auditor whistleblow, the company is not allowed to remove, discriminate, demote, suspend, or interfere with the lawful employment livelihood of the whistleblower. And beside that, the whistleblower cannot be sued in any court for the whistleblower report submitted in good faith and intended performance of duties. So Cyber Dynamic tried to sue KPMG on this, on their audit report. Based on this section, I don't think Cyber Dynamic succeed lah, but we never know. You have a good lawyer like Tan Sri Shafi, right? We cannot be sure 100%. We cannot think of some way to hold, this section. Okay. Okay, you can take a snapshot. On the other hand, financial crisis was due to collective greed and many parties involved. So in my view, which may not be your view, is the 208, you cannot just blame Lehman Brothers. It's everybody is in the boat making money. The bank officer, the broker, the bankers, I guess the house owner by themselves also greedy, or they think that, oh, house price never come down. Although I don't have enough money, I can also speculate and make some money. So they sign off also, they get a loan, you know. So auditors, either they turn one blind eye or they don't understand what's happening. They will sign the accounts. Internal auditors and external auditors also never report what they find in the loan documentation, because one of the standard audit procedure is to go through the customer file and go through the file and verify this information. So if you look through this information and you find that the information is do not really gel, then they should really whistleblow and raise the red flag. None of them do that. Okay, Bank Negara or the central bank should also have auditors going in there to look at the banks. If they did, they should have found out. But again, this did not happen. Okay, so either the Bank Negara or the financial regulators are under-resourced. There is not enough employees, which is possible because government now got budget deficit, so government also cutting back, frozen certain job intakes. So for example, you go to hospital, doctors also not enough. Those fellows have the work full time and the pay is very low. So if that's the case, maybe the regulators may not be able to do a good job because it's under-resourced. So you want to put this in your point for your answer also possible? Because of under-resourced. So the government need to put more resources and more funding into the regulator bodies so that they can send investigators and be more fully resourced. Now, even income tax department also, they cut the staff recently. They cut back, I think, 1,000 jobs, 500 or 1,000 jobs, where contractors or part-time staff are now laid off. It's taken over by AI, it's artificial intelligence. There's this thing called Chat GPT, where they can take over your job next time. So they are going to use AI, artificial intelligence, to do tax audit next time. So next time you talk to the phone, you may be talking to a robot. But for this kind of investigation, you need more than a robot. You need a real person. Okay. So take a snapshot of that. So authorities, US authorities in Malaysia, you need to mention something about it. Now, another body that's not doing the job is also the rating agencies. Malaysia, we got the RAM, overseas, you got Standards and Poor and Moody's. Now, all of these rating agencies are like a form of auditor also. They audit the credit rating and then they sign off that whether they're good or not. So Moody's and S&P, they rated Lehman Brothers and all these fellas AAA even before the collapse. So how can it be AAA and then collapse? So they are asked to report before the Congress Parliament hearing where they were grilled. So the answer offered by S&P and Moody's was that they are expressing freedom of right of opinion. They're expressing an opinion based on the freedom of speech. Because in America, you got the Constitution where everybody is allowed to express an opinion. So they say that the opinion of AAA is based on freedom of speech. Because they are not subject to licensing like auditors, because auditors are subject to licensing, so they cannot fine. But rating agencies are actually private companies, so their rating are taken by bankers based on convention only, not based on any regulation. So many people are very angry with the answer. So now the government in US are trying to come up with a law to regulate rating agencies. Okay. So conclusion and so on. So you can see that this student, putting all the references and so on. So her answer is 20-page long with about 7,000 words as a benchmark. Okay, as a benchmark for you. Is there any questions on We just went through the whole assignment because it's worth 20 marks. Is there any questions so far? Now, find out, is the student called Rina Lee. Is she still with the class? The student number is UFF210049. Sorry, I can't hear you.
She postponed her studies.
So she's not carry on with it. Okay, she's temporarily postponing. Then there's another student called Yux Pari, 210063.
I don't know her, but since day one class started for this semester.
Yeah, looks like maybe these two students may want to postpone lah. So Rina Lee is postponed for next time, and Yux Pari, none of you know what happened to him lah. Anybody know him at all?
Yeah.
Nobody, yeah?
No.
Okay, good. So I will just put down as a note. The rest of you, so they are all together 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 12 of you. Actually, I want to go through the multiple choice questions as a sample for your exam. So the exam question, don't be so worried. We will go through the sample multiple choice question. There are 10 questions. So generally, it's common sense question now to do with auditor and corporate governance. So you need to go through your, the presentation pembentangan in there. There's this checklist I put in there with the three principle and the best practices for all those things. What you need to do is just go through them and know what they are, okay? And how's the auditing the auditor relevant in those. You're lucky in the sense that those assignments that you do, I suspect in the exam question is also like repeated because we submitted several sets. They've chosen one set that actually repeat some of the questions. So you study one topic, you kill two birds with one stone lah. All right. So if you do all this assignment, you come out, you're also able to answer those multiple choice questions. So maybe I will do this in the next class, for the multiple choice. There's a whole series of samples. We'll run through it lah. I will post it. This question I also post it on the WhatsApp thing so that you can refer it in your own time later. Then we'll go through some of the questions that are likely to come out for your take-home exam questions. Okay. Maybe we can discuss that next week. I think next week you're supposed to get those questions, right? The take-home exam. Am I right? Or after the class, you're supposed to get it lah. Anyhow, because they need, because we submitted several sets to them, they will choose one set. So we will know by next week which set they will choose. We will sort of, go through the likely questions. So I think I will postpone the multiple choice question to next week. We will go through it, run through it. So if you go through that set with me, you shouldn't have problem with what do you call it, the MCQ questions. So there are only 10 MCQ questions. And then there's a theory question that to the effect of, what's the role of auditors in corporate governance, essay questions, what are the type of auditors, that kind of thing. It's an open test, open textbook test. So you can get your books ready and, answer those questions. Now for the exam questions and all the assignment, please submit in soft copy words. Words, no, don't PDF it. Don't PDF it. Submit to me in the Words Microsoft. Submit it to this auditingclass@gmail.com. We still have about half an hour left. Is there any more questions to raise? I thought it'd be more useful if you spend the remaining half hour for those who have not tidied up the quiz. All right? Can you all please tidy up in the next half an hour the quiz questions, right? Tidy up and send it to me sometime after today. Tidy it up and email to me to the auditing class, at gmail.com. Is anybody got any problem with the quiz question? The quiz question actually quite straightforward, right?
Mr. Ken, I want to
So
ask
when
you.
is the due date?
Due date is supposed to be next week, but you've done it, you must well send it earlier so that I can, wait lah. The assignment is also due next week. So if you can hand in one and then concentrate on another, might be a better idea also. But if you really have to, you can hand in both of them next week, which is a big chunk. All right. So I think the strategy is you finish off your quiz, get it out of the way, and then focus on your assignment.
Mr. Ken, I want to ask you, if let's say we email to you, how do we know that you already confirm receive or already mark our paper on the quiz and also assignment?
I will answer you lah. When I receive, I will PM you.
Oh, okay. Second
Yeah.
question for the presentation on the
Yes, presentation.
for
So
the
you got,
corporate governance checklist.
yeah, you got a few options. Okay, so next week you can come online, show your face, put on your video, put on your whatever, and
No.
you do a presentation for 5 to 10 minutes.
Because when I go through the principle, there's 3 principles on here, so how I want to relate to the WorldCom or any Enron scandal, like the sample of Enron, for Enron, actually they're hiding the debt. So how do I relate back to the governance code to explain on the finding?
Your credibility of corporate reporting, principle 3, thrown out the window already. Principle 3, credibility in your corporate reporting, So if it's fake accounting, where your credibility you already failed already, right?
Okay,
and then independence from your watching the documentary, all of them kawan-kawan, right?
False. Okay.
Alright,
Then, how about overstated the revenue, Mr. Ken?
that one also under the principle 3, credible report thrown out the window already. Still.
Then if let's say both a case also under same code, then my slide would have a same explanation on the principle of corporate governance for 2 scandal.
Basically, you have an X there. Maybe you don't have to mention everything. You just mention, for example, 1 or 2 example. Just pick up the 2. Because you don't have space, right, to put in everything. So you put, for example, is due to inflated revenue and also off-balance sheet hiding or like example, etc. So that means we know that already failed, but failed already. You got more.
So you don't have expectation for us to state it every single principle towards the scandal,
No.
because
yes, but I think one good thing is that they may have passed, is that maybe you find that even Enron may have passed some of the tests on paper all right. But overall they would have failed so if you do server dynamic, because you went through that video thing, so it become more interesting also. So it's up to you to choose what, but Enron is probably a low-hanging fruit to do. So some student may choose Transmile, whatever. Choose something that you're familiar with, and there's no right or wrong answer. Basically, to do your presentation, and show your argument,
Mr. Ken, did you mean that I have to choose only either one scandal, whether WorldCom or
yeah,
Enron?
choose one. Don't choose too many, because too many you pening kapala already. So one already headache, Don't choose 2, just choose one, enough already.
But let's say if my slide I only have 5 page, then my presentation 5 minutes already enough like that.
Enough really, basically is to prove that you've done your presentation and you have an idea how to conduct a corporate governance audit. Actually, what I'm giving you is a real life audit timetable,
I see the list.
You've seen the list, because you know why? Because the independent directors and they have to sign off this statement every year. So they are worried that if they sign blind puta sign, they are guilty of negligence, So what they do is, before they sign, they will ask the internal auditor or the external auditor to actually do an audit or walkthrough test.
So, Mr. Ken, this one, the checklist that you share, this is the Malaysia Corporate Governance Code, or can use worldwide one? Because when I do searching, there is like UK version, then another country version.
Because this Malaysia, I think better use Malaysia because you're in Malaysia. So if you go and do overseas, pening kepala also, because they are so slightly different. So because you're in Malaysia and you may become a director, you know, I just received an email, WhatsApp a week ago. One of my ex-student, a girl, she's been appointed as a director, independent director for Ace company lah. So she worried, WhatsApp me, what is the liability and all those things lah. So there's a very high chance that a lady who is an MIM member will be appointed as a director. Why? Because there are 900 companies listed, more than 900 listed in USA, and they want 1/3 of the board to be women. So if you 900 times 3, you get 2,700 women director. And at the moment, very few women director on the board of listed company. And then they say they also require MIA member on the audit committee, at least one member. So if you are a lady, right, and you have an MIA membership, wow, very good. High chance you'll be appointed as a director as a listed company later on. Either your employer will ask you to become, you know, independent director or something like that. So the fees paid is about, for her case, about 3,500 a month. Is it okay? So 3,500 a month times
Only?
12. Yeah, only lah. So, but because she's the consultant, like for a law firm, accounting firm, so they choose her to be a proxy lah. So 3,500 times 12, you're getting about 30,000-40,000 ringgit. So I think young girl, young lady, so she's a bit worried, can kena liability or not. So difficult to say lah. If company don't pay EPF, you kena also. Don't pay income tax, you also kena, So, but then we are trying to help her to look at whether the company got a lot of time bomb. If the company is clean, then okay lah. There's no issue with income tax, no issue with EPF, other regulation. Or they go and hire illegal immigrant, director also kena. Right? So to answer your question is that, Malaysian corporate governance specify that 1/3 of the board must be women. So there's positive news for you and all the ladies here. So if you get a MIA member, even better. That means you are in the target of headhunters. Headhunters will ring up, hey, you want to become director of company or IPO. You look at IPO, they're looking for directors, right? So you get a side income, about maybe if you get 5,000 a month, I consider 5,000 a month times 12, you get 60,000. 60,000 maybe okay for side income. But make sure you check the company, see company got a lot of time bomb. Okay. Where was I just now? So we will do the multiple choice next week. And then for those who have not finished their MCQ, the quiz, please spend the next half an hour, go and finalize it, okay, and start sending it to me. So once I receive it, I will private message you all that I've received, so you know that I've received it, okay. So send in the quiz first and focus on the assignment. Next week, on Sunday, we will do the MCQ. So once you've done the MCQ with me for the test, I think you should pay for the online test, okay? Then we'll go through the take-home exam, those questions, how to tackle it. And I have to tell you that server dynamic is one of the topics also. So you have time, run through the server dynamic annual report and things like that. It will help you to answer better in the question, right? Server dynamic, we make it a take-home exam kind of topic because it's a current issue, it's a real issue, and the world is looking at us because of this issue also. So, and you can monitor the development later on next year, whether something concrete will be done or not. Now, the CFO and CEO has been sued in a civil court by bankers, because the bankers got no other recourse other than go to civil court to sue them for bankruptcy and for for the loans outstanding, because they guaranteed the mistake that the Karim and the CFO and the ED made was they guaranteed the loan personally. Some of these transactions they guaranteed personal guarantee. So now the banks are going after them in the personal guarantee. So they're trying to fight the case. So if they lose the case, then they will personally go bankrupt. But Karim, I think, can travel overseas because he's now living in the Middle East. He's overseas. So maybe he foresee that if he lose the case, then he don't come back here. It can be like that also. I don't know. It's interesting to watch. Yeah? Any questions? Any further questions?
Sir, sorry, quick check. We have two
Okay, yes.
exams, right? Multiple choice exam and take-home exam. Both are in 28th of February, is it?
I remember there's a date. I will WhatsApp you the date afterwards in the WhatsApp chat group. Confirm the date. Offhand, I cannot remember. I thought it's in March, the exam is in March.
Oh, okay.
I think so, but let me confirm afterwards. I will WhatsApp.
Okay, sir.
Okay, so the MCQ one is 10 marks. We'll go through that next week. So once you can do that, you should be okay for that. And then there's one question on the role of auditors and corporate governance. We have discussed that in length. So you may want to go through that pembentangan thing and then familiarize yourself with the corporate governance code. Okay. Do read through the annual report for Cyber Dynamic because in the take-home exam, I think in one of the sets, it's mentioned to discuss about this case, right? Compare with Enron, compare with whatever. Compare our scandal with other people's scandal. So you have time to prepare, and all of these are open book tests. Okay. So, but sometimes open book tests is a problem where you don't know where to look, right? So you better put the books ready so that you know, keep it open and marked so you know exactly where to look for it. Okay, so if you have no further questions, okay, your pembentangan, you got a few choices. So next week, during the class, you can come on for 5 minutes, right? Do your presentation, and it'll be recorded. We record it, so that's counted. Number 2 is you can send in your video recording to me. You can use file mail or something, one of the software that can send big files to me, to the auditingclass@gmail.com, all right? And the third possibility is we can arrange for short sessions in the evenings, okay, where you come online, maybe 1 or 2 of you come online and you take your turns to finish it on Zoom, okay, and we record it. So which choice you want, you have to make up your mind within now to next week. In fact, this week, if you want to do that, you let me know what days you want to do it. I can send you the link. Then we can come on Zoom together and you do it. But if you are too embarrassed to do it in front of 13 other people, you can do maybe 1-on-1 or 2-on-1. Yeah. But last year, a lot of the students prefer to do the video recording, which I've shown to you. Some of them actually quite good also. They are quite good at making videos. And you saw it on the video replay. So you have actually not much time. So you all decide. So Chin, you want to do it next week, right? In the live.
I do recording, Mr. Ken. No, I do recording. Recording very fast.
That means you do
I do
your own
recording.
and then you email to me. Okay. If you prefer to do that, that's fine. Yeah, just that I'm giving you an option because, you want to do it more conveniently. But recording is fine. That's the best because you have time to prepare. So those who want to do recording, do it. Then later on, there's this software called File Mail. I put it down on the WhatsApp. If you use a File Mail software, you can attach very big files and email to me using File Mail. All right.
Okay.
And then I can download it within 7 days. File Mail can send you many gigs of video, no problem.
Okay, understand.
I will send that link to you. You can use that. Or if you've got any software that can use and send big files, so it's fine. Right? So,
Can we upload in Google Drive and share the link with you?
Also can. Yes, also can. Yeah. Then I just download from your link. Yeah, that can be done also. So you'll become movie director for the next 1 week. So this course is not designed to be like your normal accounting course where you do calculation or whatever. I think it's more of a social science kind of subject that is still evolving, but it does involve your work and your liability at work because people can go to jail. Young people like you all can go to jail because the boss may be doing something that implicate you for their own protection. I've seen many cases, like Transvaal case, the young fella kena very short sentence with no jail. I think the judge understand that they are probably been made use of also lah, because they don't understand the liabilities. So now that you've undergone this course, you know all the time bombs that are standing, looking around, and you won't be victimized. You won't become a victim lah, hopefully, okay, of fraud. You can become a victim of fraud within a fraud also.
Mr. Ken, last question on the corporate governance for the finding of Enron or WorldCom. What recommendation that you prefer us to write down now? Because
I
if
would
we
think
write
that
down, we just refer back to the
I would
corporate
send,
governance punya akta, tak boleh?
I would think that if they have strict enforcement, right? Heavy jail sentences for all parties concerned.
Okay, faham.
Kena means like Singapore, so even kena 31 years for manipulation,
Okay, faham.
but Malaysia kena 1 day, so we're the minimum one, right?
Okay,
So
okay,
they show
faham.
they are serious. Nobody dare to fool around in Singapore already. Yeah, but I think Malaysia, still a lot of people like fool around because you kena 1 day jail and found one. So you are encouraging this to happen,
Okay, faham.
So you can mention this heavy punishment, all right, heavy enforcement, and to check the police also. The auditor must be checked also. How come auditor never find out? And punish the auditor.
Okay.
And don't punish the whistleblower. Malaysia have a tendency to punish the whistleblower. Don't punish the whistleblower. Reward the whistleblower. So in US, they reward the whistleblower. They get rich. If they report, they can get millions, in terms of reward money, right? So Malaysia maybe should follow, at least make a reward, right?
Yeah.
For reward, then people more likely to do it. And protection, very important. Personal protection, bodyguard. And like US, they got witness protection scheme. FBI will protect, especially if you testify against mafia. The FBI will give you new ID, even plastic surgery, new passport, new IC number, everything. All right. But Malaysia, the other, so you whistleblow, later they find out you are the one. Then the guy hire gangster, how? Like Jalil Ibrahim, the poor fella who died, got murdered. Yeah, he got no bodyguard. Right? So the wife say, maybe you should bring bodyguard there. But you got to be smart also lah. If you go overseas to do investigation and you find something, you should keep quiet also. You find that you know, you also pretend you don't know. You come back only you report lah. Don't ever report overseas. Even if you are outstation in the construction site, you find something, you better don't report there because you're on the way back, you might kena kidnap also. So it's not a very safe profession if you find something lah. But you do need, I think whistleblower do need protection. Okay. Now Malaysia punish the whistleblower if they don't report. But if they report, there's no reward. All right. So not very fair, I think. That's my view, my view. Okay. So if there is no further question, the rest of you please continue to finish off your quiz. Don't waste because I know very difficult to do assignment once the week start. You got to work and everything lah. So other momentum now. Go and finish it off. Okay. You already build a structure. Just add on sikit, tambah sikit, finalize it, send it to me, the quiz one. Then you just focus on your assignment. So today assignment actually we went through quite in depth lah. So you know what is required, number of pages and the number of words, and based on what other students have done, that is a kind of expectation for 20 marks. 20 marks is quite a lot of marks also. Project, so we expect something more substantial. Okay, if there's no further question, then shall we sign off and you all will go and do your necessary work until at least 6 o'clock. Okay, there is a chat box here. Let me see what is in the, there's some comments. Di penjara sekejap tak buat orang gerun pun. Okay. Yeah, there's some pretty good comments. I'm glad that some of you actually go and see the movie called The Big Short. It is I think it's a Netflix movie. You got chance, you can see that. Enron also, there's a movie being made, by Netflix. I can't remember the name, but it's a dramatized movie lah. without all the, those scenes. It's more family orientated type of movie. Okay, thanks for Michael Burry is the one who discovered and make a lot of money from the subprime. Lehman Brothers who collapsed first. Okay, good. Actually, you're right, Jay. Who's this? Mohammed. Lehman Brothers CEO have a meeting with Warren Buffett also. This guy contact Warren Buffett to ask him to help. Warren Buffett said no, thank you, because Warren Buffett is quite smart, so he knows time bomb. Okay, all right, that's good. Due date for presentation also next week. Someone asked. We try to do as much as we can, but if you cannot do it because you are rushed, after the end of the class, next week is the last class, we can do some sessions, revision sessions after that informally. I will organize maybe during the week. After the last class, we still have some I'll have some Zoom link available, so you all can join in to discuss if you have problem and do your presentation during those times. Okay? So if you cannot make it, really cannot make it, the due date of the presentation, we can extend it by another week where I will have smaller group sessions. Those who want to join after the class, we will Zoom in and we can do it there. And also to discuss any further problems you have. Is that okay? So this is to answer the question from Nadia, due date for presentation. Okay. Any more questions? No more questions, then we'll sign off. And okay, please go and do your quiz now and finish it off, and don't wait. The more you wait, the more difficult. Okay. So have a good week ahead, and I will catch up with you guys next week to do the MCQ and things like that. Okay. So good evening, guys, and signing off now. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you there. See you later. Do WhatsApp me if you have any problem.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.